First Coast from the WJCT News Team.
On the independent 89.9 HD4, we're providing a platform for music discovery that's free from the algorithms that push listeners toward the squishy middle of sameness. We're playing new music from non-commercial artists, handpicking each song with care because we really do care. And we believe that music discovery unlocks the potential of music to move and inspire. Dig in deeper with us on 89.9 HD4, the WJCT app, or on jacksmusic.org.
Hear from some of the biggest newsmakers in the community on First Coast Connect, where we discuss the issues and stories that affect your life across the First Coast. We also ask for your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Engagement is what drives the show. So engage with us right now as we get started here in just a few minutes on First Coast Connect.
Good morning. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Michelle Corum. School started yesterday for some students in Florida, including many in the Jacksonville metro area. As Daylina Miller reports, the new school year comes with new laws that will impact both students and teachers.
The expansion of the parental rights and education law, or what critics call Don't Say Gay, means that some changes are in effect this school year. K-12 students will be required to use bathrooms and pronouns that align with the gender they are assigned at birth. Parents will have to sign a consent form before their child can be called by a name other than the one on their birth certificate, even if it's a common nickname. Also, teachers won't be able to discuss gender and sexuality in class, and parents will be able to opt kids out of sex ed and more easily challenge books. I'm Daylina Miller in Tampa.
The Department of Veterans Affairs has extended its deadline to begin a claim for PACT Act benefits, backdated to August 10th of last year. Joe Burns reports.
Veterans and their survivors now have until 11:59 p.m. Monday to apply for those maximum benefits at va.gov. Otherwise, they can apply at any time. The previous deadline was Wednesday of this week, but the VA cited, quote, technical difficulties, as last-minute applicants flooded the department website and many of them got error messages. The PACT Act expands health care and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange, and other dangerous substances. It has a list of health conditions, including many cancers, that are presumed to be caused by that exposure. It was signed into law by President Biden last August. In Ocala, I'm Joe Burns.
The VA says anyone who received an error message has been logged into the system, and the department is reaching out to them. We have an excessive heat warning today from 10 until 8. Temperatures are expected to reach 100 degrees, a 30% chance of storms later in the afternoon.
Hey, it's Al Letson. You're listening to First Coast Connect. I'm coming to you live from Studio 2 at WJCT, sitting in the big chair. And ladies and gentlemen, it is time to make the donuts. If you know that reference, then you're probably a Gen Xer, I would say. And maybe a boomer too, because Dan Scantlin's giving me the look right now. All right, so of course, if Dan is in the studio with me, that means it is time for the Media Roundtable. That's what we're doing most of the day. And then afterwards, we are going to boldly go where no one has gone before. It's all about the Trekkers, which I have to say, they are my people. Like, I am such a Trekkie. Someone put Trekker in the script.
Trekker is the adult version. Trekkie is the pointy-eared
really
geek.
I don't know if I agree with that.
No.
Because I don't know if I agree with that because I'm a Trekkie.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, I could wear the pointy ears, live long and prosper. You know, one of the greatest stories ever told. Anyway. We're going to talk about politics today, and then later we'll geek out and do the Trekkie stuff. So first in this hour, in the Media Roundtable, we have some amazing guests, people all of which that I love and respect. First up, my friend, journalist Angela Spears of Angela Spear Communication. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am good.
Should I tell you that I'm afraid I'm between you and Dan? I'm not a Trekkie.
But you are a Cowboy fan. So
I am 100% Cowboys Nation.
Many reasons.
I need to be scared.
Yes. I mean, until you brought it up, I was like, I didn't even know there was a team in Dallas.
The hate is real
It
in
is.
here today.
I'm
I'm
gonna
glad I'm
admit
in the
it.
corner.
I'm gonna admit it. The hate is real.
Oh, goodness.
Next to me on the other side, my man, Andrew Pentazzi of the Tributary, of which I'm a board member. I should tell everybody. Every time I say the Tributary, I have to say, like, I'm a board member. Andrew drafted me years ago, and he hasn't kicked me out yet. So, Andrew, thank you for not kicking me out. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Al.
And then, of course, the Clark Kent of the operation here at WJCT, Dan Scanlon of WJCT News. Sir, how are you?
I'm fine, Al. Good morning.
All right, so you can listen live on the radio or watch our video stream right now on Facebook and WJCT, and you can see us on our YouTube page. You can call us at 549-2837. Tweet us at First Coast Connect on air. That's tweet us at FCC on air. Email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or message us at First Coast Connect's Facebook page. So, guys, let's start it off and figure out all things Jacksonville. Our top story, we learned yesterday that there is yet another death at the Duval County Jail. Andrew, the Tributary has been covering this ongoing issue closely. What's the latest?
Yeah, so my coworker Nicole has been writing about the jail deaths for a while, and we're now up to 11 deaths so far this year, not even 7.5 months completed. And you compare that to Harris County, Texas, Houston, which is the third most populous county, 4.5 times our population, and they've had 10 deaths so far this year. And in Harris County, that's viewed as so bad that they've been talking about federal or state takeovers of the jail. And here we are in a much smaller county. We're dealing with a catastrophe, a moral, emotionally tragic catastrophe, where we're up to 11 deaths. We're only counting the deaths of people who are in jail or being transported from the jail to the hospital. And we haven't heard, anything from, the state attorney's office or from, any federal indication of investigations into what's going on. Sheriff Waters has said he is canceling the contract with their private healthcare provider and switching over, which will begin next month, to another private healthcare provider. But we haven't seen the kind of desire, it seems, for an independent auditing or looking at what's happening in the jail, why we've seen such a spike over the last few years.
The current provider of healthcare in the jail has a bad track record. But also, the other company that the sheriff has chosen to take over has just as bad of a track record. I had Nicole in here and we were talking, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe she said under the new company, what company is that?
NavCare.
Under NavCare, a man died in jail from bed bugs.
Yeah. In Fulton County in Atlanta, Georgia, a man was essentially eaten alive by bed bugs and died.
Which sounds like a horror movie, but it's actually true.
Yeah.
And so this is the company now that we are switching to, and that's what we're riding with.
Yeah. It's a $110 million potential contract, and the sheriff says he did a thorough investigation. We don't know what that investigation was, how he determined, but this was another no-bid contract where we're not sending out competitive bids. We're not trying to say, let's assess everyone who can possibly do this. It's just, hey, I heard a name. I believe that I thoroughly investigated it, and so I'm going to sign a contract with them. We are not, the sheriff's office does not follow the same kind of procurement we tend to expect from many of the city agencies. And we're just going from one no-bid contract, which got us Armor, the current healthcare provider, to another no-bid contract without trying to look at who else might have applied if we had opened it up.
It almost sounds like a fire sale. You're striving to get rid of the old and get it gone as quick as possible. The sheriff's response when questioned about the bad problems that could be alleged with this new company is he's going to be on top of it. They're going to work on it. They're going to confront them. It's going to be 1-to-1. But we have had 4 in-custody deaths since June 26th, and then we had another person who died in the back of a police car in early July while being arrested. So to me, that's an in-custody death as well. Now, that said, some of them have had medical issues. Some of them were complaining of chest palpitations. Some of them, you don't know the medical history, but I'd asked the obvious question yesterday, and the cops answered very quickly. The jail does have air conditioning, so this is not heat related. We don't know if some parts of those cells or cell blocks don't have functioning AC. So in almost all these cases, also, the medical staff, which is the current, soon-to-be ex-medical provider staff, were there to help, and then JFRD came in, and they determined either that the person was dead or, after transport to the hospital, the person was declared dead. So, but you're right. Here we were discussing in this newsroom yesterday at 4 o'clock about the fact we were going to talk about the 3 deaths, and then, ping, the email comes with the 40-year-old black male who died.
Isn't it whose responsibility? And we asked this question, I'm sure, whose responsibility is it to do the workup? We were talking about this, Al, just before you walked in. Whose job is it to do a workup? Let's just say you have someone who had a kidney transplant, right? And they need their medication, their anti-rejection drugs. And that person, didn't we have someone who died recently who said he needed his heart medication? Whose job is it who's going to do this workup? Isn't that what they're supposed to be doing? But is that really happening?
Yes.
Is just because people don't care, because we say, oh, this is someone who was put in jail? I mean, aren't we all innocent until proven guilty?
This was one of the things that Nicole found in her reporting, is that when Armor has been running their contract, they have a requirement to do these medical screenings when people are coming in, and they weren't doing them. And we actually, our accreditation from this National Corrections Accreditation for Medical Care was dinged because we were not doing the audits, doing the workups in the timely manner we were supposed to. And so that's one of the areas where we have been struggling, is people come in and we're not making sure we know what medical needs they have. And I'll also say, one of the things that Sheriff Waters has pointed to is that every facility struggles to some degree. But I think that misses that we are struggling at a level that I don't know of any other facility struggling as much as we are to keep people alive when they get arrested. And we used to not struggle like this. It's
worth noting that the Duval County Health Board or Duval County Health used to be in the jails, used to take care of these issues, and now they're not. And now we're using a private company. And I think it's fair to say that a private company is in it to make money. And so if a private company is in it to make money, your number one expense is staffing. And so you try to find ways to cut down staffing. And I think that is what's showing up when we see these deaths, is that if there's a lack of staffing, if you don't have enough people to do an intake, to chase down what kind of medications that they need, then you get into this position where ultimately you pay for it with people's lives. Let's go to the phones. We've got Linda in Mandarin. Linda, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. I'd like to pull the conversation out to a bigger view of the sheriff's office in general. Every year, just like inflation, we are asked to give more to the sheriff's office. I would like to propose that we treat the sheriff's office like a business, because at this point, they are a financial liability in the streets when something goes wrong and we have to pay millions. Or now with deaths, when we get investigations, we're going to pay millions, us the taxpayers. Most jobs, you have a baseline, you do a performance review, you meet your performance review, you get a raise. If you don't, you stay at the same level, or you might be at a job in jeopardy. Why? And I know law enforcement is supposed to be different, but I think we need to incentivize the sheriff's office to act like they're accountable to somebody, a citizen review board or someone, because right now, they have good officers out there, but it's all about, at the sheriff's level, contract administration. It's about management. And I know they elected him. I didn't vote for him, but that's his job. I'll give him support to do what he needs to do. We're still the murder capital. We've got this runaway, no contract bids, incentivized to not take care of people. And ultimately, when his officers or his administration is found liable, they don't have umbrella policy for those officers or those people in jail. They don't have umbrella policies to pay for negligence. We pay for it. So I want some accountability for the money I'm going to have to pony up for them. You can see.
Thank you. Linda, thank you so much. Linda has a point. What tools do we as the public have to demand accountability from the sheriff?
So Tallahassee has taken away even more of the tools that already existed. One thing they've done is now the sheriff, when given funding, he can move the funding around without needing to go to the city council. So if you gave the sheriff specific funding and said this needs to be going to corrections, the sheriff is allowed to say, okay, well, I'm moving it over to, our narcotics drug buy bust operations instead, because that's where I want to spend it. No other city department is able to do that. Only the sheriff has that freedom to be able to move money around at will. And that's something that came out of Tallahassee. And then functions like a civilian review board have been neutered. And the Florida Supreme Court has ruled, it basically can only function in an advisory recommendation type of capacity.
Yeah, that's the question I had, because I hear people bringing up these advisory boards all the time as if that's going to be a solution. But the truth of the matter is that an advisory board without any power is not a solution. It's just a way to make people feel good, really. Like, okay, we have this board, but if we have a board, a community review board, but if what they say can be ignored by the sheriff, and most likely will be ignored by the sheriff, what good is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the things that have been most powerful that we've seen in other places, because there are even places that have powerful civilian review boards and they still have rampant problems. I think of, Chicago as an example, where the Chicago police still are having terrible problems. But the things that have made, I think, the most impact in other communities are places that have federal consent decrees and federal court monitors.
I don't know, man. I've been living in right outside of Oakland, and I can tell you, I don't think that Oakland's been under a decree for like 19 years, and not a lot has changed. I could tell you a story about working on a documentary. I wasn't working on the documentary, but a filmmaker was, and he asked me to help him with some stuff. And he was embedded with the police in Oakland. And the story was about the feds watching the Oakland Police Department for over like 19 years, I think at this point. And in the middle of making the documentary, a scandal broke that the police were actually trafficking 2 young girls. And so, like,
It's tragic.
yeah, it's tragic. But all of this happened under the watchful eye of the federal government. So I hear you on that. I don't know if that actually makes a difference. Dan?
Well, first of all, the late, great Ben Frazier and many others like the group I Care have been pushing for a civilian review board for years. Both sheriffs, Williams and the current sheriff, have said no. And it was a question that was heard by many of the sheriff's candidates or given to them during the recent campaign. And the majority opinion was no. The good news about having even an unofficial civilian review is that you have some of those facts on paper from community leaders that you probably trust. We used to, and Andrew may remember this, that when there was an officer shooting, civilians were allowed to hang out when the police did their review. That was then taken away. So now you get a neatly edited video of some of what is occurring when an officer does this, and you see the decision made by that body, and you can accept it or not accept it. They certainly appear to be doing their homework, but none of us are sitting in that room when that discussion is being heard and talked about so that we can hear the facts from the officer involved, the reviewing board, etc.
Didn't the sheriff at one point say that accountability was a radical idea?
Yeah, I don't know. Did he? Like, I don't know.
I remember doing the campaign ads,
Yeah.
that's what I'm going back to whenever we talked about that with radical, accountability. But it all goes back to what we're all saying is accountability. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have that in those citizen review boards. Maybe that's something now we'll bring back up, continue to bring it up, because we have to keep asking those questions. Right. We have to keep saying this is what people want. And if enough citizens, and, once again, it's poo-pooed on, but we have to keep saying people have to keep saying this is what we need. Going back to how it used to be when you were able to watch.
You can join the conversation at 5492937. You can tweet us at FCC On Air. First Coast Connect to WJCT.org and Facebook. You can find us also on YouTube, where you can see all these beautiful people here in the studio with me. And on the lines, we've got Stanley from the North Side. Stanley, how are you today, sir?
Good morning, everybody. I'm appalled by the fact everybody keep talking as if the people don't have any power. When it comes to the review board, you may not get power okay from the sheriff's department, but we still can interview. We can get that information because we can request information about what's taking place and expose it through the media. We can keep the media informed because when it comes to
Stanley, you there?
All right, I'll jump on that one right now. You do have a procedure. Journalists have a procedure to make a request through a media portal, and within 24 to 48 hours, you'll get the report you request, but it is heavily redacted, and they claim it's because of HIPAA and Marcy's Law in the state of Florida. You can find those reports a few days later, usually after the person is arrested, on the court core system, and you can get a little more information if the affidavit is connected, but it's difficult, and it takes some time to get there.
I think we still got Stanley on the line. Stanley, did you finish your thought?
No, I did not. But my main concern here, there's no accountability in this city here. And when it comes to a civic engagement in this city, we always talking about there's no way we can make adjustments so we can play a part in making a difference in the city. Now, when it comes down to the jail department, often, a lot of times, we just go along with what the sheriff says. We don't investigate as citizens. We don't take the time to investigate. We just go along with whatever they say. And there's politics in the sheriff department, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley.
And people do have the power. It's called our vote.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that is the place where you can flex your muscle because while the idea of a community review board, I think, is a great idea, but also doesn't give you a lot of power. If that community review board can bring out the information,
and nothing happens.
Well, nothing happens. But if you take that information and then go to
tie it to the actual community,
right?
Like if it's a civilian review board, but it's off siloed and nobody's responding. I mean, one thing I will say about Sheriff Waters, I think, is different than his predecessor. Is that he seems much more to pay attention to what's going on in the community. He is more engaged with the community, and I think he's listening to the community. And so I think people actually responding, and I think to Stanley's point about like where power comes from, not just with the civilian review board, but also through people protesting, through activism, through people calling for change. At least so far, we're still early into Sheriff Waters' term. He seems to be paying more attention to what people care about.
Yeah, and let's go to the phones. We've got Christopher. Christopher, how are you this morning?
I'm fine. How are y'all? It's good to hear you.
Good to hear you. What's your thoughts today?
My thought is that I think this city, I'm third generation Jacksonville, and I think that when we went through with the JEA of the city taking back control of our municipalities, why we're bringing in this third-party group to manage the health in the jails, I know that there is an economic pause right now and people are looking for work. Why do we not start our own healthcare system for the jails rather than depending upon these corporate people who's, as far as I've seen through the media, have huge death rates and they're not treating people the way that they need to be treated?
Christopher,
I just think that if we could take a handle on it.
Yeah, Christopher, thank you so much for your call. To his point, like I said before, the Duval County Health Department was in the jails and did run it and did not have the same type of casualties that we are seeing now. I don't know what went into the decision to privatize. I won't even try to come up with something there. I don't know. But I know that we did make the shift out of it being something that the county took care of into something that private companies take care of now.
Well, Al, I've talked to a sheriff recently, as well as a former sheriff's office person, about the actual counties being involved. And it was not an easy road to hoe to have to try to do it in-house.
Yeah.
I guess there was some thought that if we have an accredited quote unquote company that does this for a living, that the process will be streamlined and will be done better than us trying to clunk along and do it ourselves.
So I think this is a key problem we have in Jacksonville. So most sheriff's offices, your primary role as a sheriff's office is being the jailer. For us, because of consolidation, where we don't have a police department, most places have a city police department that's primarily responsible for the policing. Because we have it all in one agency, I think sometimes we get people who become sheriffs or become undersheriffs, directors who are primarily focused on and care about the policing part of the job, and the jailing part of the job gets neglected. We did have a period of time where we had Sheriff Rutherford who went from corrections to sheriff, and that was a period of time where not only did we have Duval Health Department, we then actually brought it in-house into JSO, the medical care, until Sheriff Williams took over, who came up through the patrol, through the SWAT side, and then we privatized.
All right, and you can join the conversation at 549-2937. You can tweet us at FCC on air. Email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org and find us on Facebook and YouTube. So Mayor Deegan announced some new appointees yesterday. Dan, what can you tell us about them?
Well, first of all, a person who sat in this room many a Friday, Randy DeFore, a former city councilwoman and attorney who's been a media pundit, is now going to be the general counsel, I guess, pending city council approval. And those of us who have sat at this table with her know she's sharp, she's focused, she is certainly involved, and now she's going to be basically the city's top attorney with a staff underneath her. We probably won't have her back at this table again, but I think that's a refreshing point. We've got Nina Sickler, who's heading up Public Works, the first woman to head up that department. It's been traditionally a male-oriented department. Alex Alston is the chief of sports and entertainment, certainly has a lot of sports and entertainment abilities underneath his belt. Rudy Jameson is the executive director of the Human Rights Commission. We've got Jimmy Midyett, who has been a candidate for numerous offices over the years, now the diversity manager for the Human Rights Commission. Gregory Grant is the Jacksonville Small and Emerging Business Administrator. And Bill Delaney, the son of our former mayor, is going to serve as the council liaison. Deegan herself said this is probably, this latest edition makes this a group of administrators that is the most rounded, the most visible, the most representative of what the city's makeup is. It's certainly the most racially and gender diverse. And again, we know a lot of these people as journalists. We know of them from previous years. They are comfortable in their skins. I think we have a good shot at an interesting and diverse and talented group.
And I agree with what you're saying, because it is a diverse group, talented group. There's some people who I've been talking with when it comes to the appointments. Yes, they're satisfied with the appointments, but some would say, is Mayor Deegan going over the edge with bringing in the other side, right? Because a lot of times you see that she's trying to bring both sides, Republican and Democrats, to the Democratic people to the table. But I've been talking with some people who say, hey, maybe she's going a little too far with bringing too many Republicans to the table. And, so we have to see. And like, I agree with you with Randy, right? Randy's fair. She's going to be just. She's tough. And that's what the city needs. But
the mayor brought in a bunch of gators.
and she's an FSU person. But some would say that that's what the both sides of it, that you're bringing in too many of one side versus too many of your own. Because Lenny Curry didn't bring in only one or two Democrats.
I do think that we can overly partisanize or talk about party too much when it comes to local politics, because I think Randy and Al Ferraro, two Republicans that she brought into, Randy DeFore as general counsel, Al Ferraro as neighborhoods director, are facing potentially the toughest confirmation fights with the Republican supermajority council. I think that a lot of the local issues don't fall neatly along party lines. And
they gave Randy a hard time as councilwoman.
Yeah.
Because she stood up for people.
And so I think that it can be easy to just go down too much into the Republican versus Democrat, where there would be Democrats who are more favorable to the Republican city council and Republicans less favorable. And so I think what we have to see is how Mayor Deegan handles this city council with the confirmation process, and is she able to overcome that? Because that was a huge issue for the last Democratic mayor, Alvin Brown, who also brought in Republicans, but also had a bad relationship with city council that really hampered his ability to accomplish his policy agenda.
Do all of these new appointments have to go through the confirmation?
No.
Not all.
No, not all of them.
Not all.
Randy DeFore does. Public Works, I believe, does. Some of these are her own appointments that don't. So city council liaison doesn't, but some of these are going to have to go through. And I think that it's the two that are really standing out as the toughest fights for her are Randy DeFore and Al Ferraro. Again, both former Republican council members.
Yeah.
And didn't Al face some pushback this week during a city council committee meeting, despite all the support he had during the public speaking section?
Yeah, the mayor's asked to defer to give him more time, I think, to speak with city council members to, explain why he would be the right fit for the position for neighborhoods director. And we'll see if she's successful. And Randy has an even harder one because she has to get 13 yes votes out of the 19 council members. Al just needs a simple majority. So we'll see if she can get the 13 votes for Randy as general counsel. And I do think it's helpful to give people context on why these appointments matter, too. General counsel is one of the most powerful positions in the city because it oversees not just the mayor, it also oversees the sheriff's office, the school district, JEA, the Port Authority, the Housing Authority, the City Council. They give binding legal opinions, and they are the lawyer for all of city government. They're appointed by the mayor, but they have enormous authority over every aspect of our city government.
And we're going to go to the phones. We got John on the south side. John, how are you this morning?
Well, good morning, and thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to weigh in on the council appointees and specifically, Randy DeFore with Office of General Counsel. And I just want to, a little background history, but the ordinance was 2017-160, public participation. The ability for any citizen to address our legislative representatives before a vote is taken on any issue. And that is now literally gone. And it was back with Carla Miller when she was the ethics director, and it was an interpretation by OGC that it was removed. Now we do have 67 counties. So the big thing, as it goes through the process, would Randy DeFore reinstate public participation throughout the Jacksonville City Council Legislative Committee process.
Thanks, John.
It's interesting. We were talking again about this in the newsroom yesterday, and someone said, "Do you know who the current general counsel is?" And as a journalist, I don't remember any of the past ones until you go back to Cindy Laquadera, who was always in the news because there were so many issues that the general counsel's office had to publicly discuss, and she was accessible to the media and would talk about things. The last thing I can remember about the general counsel's office was a certain former city council member who was running for mayor, and there was a subcommittee put together to investigate some of the allegations against her and or her husband and failure to disclose. And the general counsel's office was a major player in the hearings about that and some mandates that came. But I can't tell you who the general counsel or assistant general counsel was who presented. I just know it happened.
I do just want to bring up what John says, because this is something I think for listeners, one of the ways that his general counsel affects everyday citizens is through these opinions that can affect even public participation. As John's pointing out, the idea that there has to be public participation before any vote is taken on a matter, and how OGC interprets that law and how they either disempower or give teeth to ordinances like that. And so this is directly how you interpret public meetings, and the requirement for public participation can come from this one office. And so we'll have to see how much, if Randy DeFore is approved, how much she changes tact. When she spoke to the Qualifications Review Committee, she was the only one among them who really laid out I think there are things that have happened there that are wrong. I think that there needs to be change in the general counsel's office. And she outlined, how she wanted to pursue that.
Now, talking overall about all of the appointments, just when you talk with some people will say that with some of the things that Mayor Deegan's doing, yes, making the good appointments, but they're coming a little slowly for some people, because you have some people with some departments are on pins and needles. And that happens with every administration, right? I was part of administration, decisions were made quickly, right? Coming in, making those decisions. Maybe the last administration, they made some decisions. Some she may not be making as quickly. some of these appointments, general counsel, director of public works, sports and entertainment, because some people, other people who are waiting to see if they still have a job, because everybody, when a new administration comes in, has to put in his or her resignation.
Yeah,
and you're waiting for that to say, hey, am I going to be kept? And how long is this going to take? Is this going to be 3 months? Is it going to be 2 months? Is it going to be 1 month? How long?
Just a week ago, I talked to a department head and asked this person if they were aware if they were still keeping the job or not, and that person said they did not know.
Yeah.
And literally, that's a position that I think we want to know if it's going to stay or go or get replaced.
The growing pains of a new administration.
Yep.
You can join the conversation at 549-2937. You can tweet us at FCC on air. First Coast Connect to WJCT.org, and you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and probably a bunch of other places I can't think of right now. Let's move on into back to school. School is starting in Duval, I think, next week. Andrew,
Yes.
your
Monday.
Your kids are in the lobby. Are they ready to go back to school?
I am ready for them to go back to school. We are in the week in between.
Your oldest son is shaking his head, going, no.
His whole body is going
No.
sideways.
We're in the week in between summer camp ending and school starting, so I am ready for them to start school. Though I have to say, the sudden changes, the last-minute changes coming out of Tallahassee, and the way that that's affecting the district as a parent is concerning, and it's I think concerning for school administrators, for teachers, for everyone, that there's so many last-minute things that have had to change, and I think that hurts the quality of our education in Florida.
There's a lot going on there. Let me just run down a couple key points. Like number one, teacher shortages, the voucher system, the AP Psych and Black History curriculum controversies, the continued debate over banned books, and we are still searching for a new superintendent in Duval County. I mean, that's a lot. How are parents supposed to navigate this?
Well, right now we're taking care of a grandchild, so we are ipso facto parents, and I'm married to a retired teacher. So certainly the bus driver shortage situation is a concern. Is our little guy going to actually get on a bus next week, or is it going to be a transfer, or is it going to be a longer bus because there's a surplus driver or they brought in somebody? The fact that we still have teachers who don't know what AP courses they're going to teach because they just got the programs pulled out from under them, and school starts. School has started already in some counties.
It's terrifying that education isn't what it used to be. I'm not that old, I'm half a century old, but but the things that we were able to learn, right? The things that you were able to teach. I mean, yes, some things I was taught, some things I wasn't. And I had to wait to college to get to learn mainly about my people, right? Because in high school, where I went to school, you didn't read books by Black people for whatever reason, right?
Right.
You learned that in college. I was like, oh wow, they're authors out here. They're different things. But it's just sad that now, looking at your boys out there, they are not going to know history. They're not going to know the real history, so it's going to have to be you as a parent to teach, and you're going to be the one to teach them. But you have some parents who they could care less, right? And
they can care less, but also like parents who just don't have time. Like
they're not going to.
Yeah, the children are just not going to get it, because if you're trying to pay the bills and
trying to make it,
coming home and educating your children about history. I don't know. It can be a challenge.
And I'm terrified too for the teachers,
because
a teacher is there to teach, right? A teacher is there to teach facts. As with journalism, as a journalism professor, my job is to teach facts. Facts matter. And then not to be able to do that for some of these teachers, I feel for them. And what's going to happen when they say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to go along with this. If I were a history professor in high school, middle school, I would be still teaching the truth. I wouldn't have a job. I may be arrested, right? But I would still say, hey, you know what? No, Black people didn't benefit from slavery. Come on, get real.
And one of the things you're pointing out is this connects back to the jail conversation of like also the criminalization. So in these new laws and like the Parental Rights and Education Act that was passed that caused a lot of these changes, it makes it a third-degree felony for teachers to violate the law to teach something about sexual orientation or sexuality to children.
Wait, you just said it's a felony.
It's a felony.
Third degree.
Yeah. And so
that's why they're quitting.
So that means like your risk, the reason why so many school districts, because here's what happens. The state puts out some guidance that's really vague, And it's really hard to fully understand what it means. And then you get a district like Hillsborough County announced they're not going to teach Shakespeare anymore, not fully. They're only going to do excerpts because Shakespeare includes sex in his or references to sexuality in his plays. So they're not going to do it anymore. And then Tallahassee is like, oh, that's ridiculous. You're over-interpreting it. And it's like, well, if we go the opposite direction and we're too loose, you're saying you're going to suspend a prosecutor if they don't prosecute us for felonies. So yes, we're going to be really hesitant. We're going to be really scared. We're afraid of what's going to happen. This keeps happening where districts take the guidance, which is really vague, and they go, according to Tallahassee, too far with it. And like the other one that's happening right now is districts can't refer to children by names other than what the parents say is acceptable, which includes nicknames. It's like in Orange County, they're sending out forms. If you want, my son is Calvin, we sometimes call him Cal. If you want him to be called Cal by a teacher, you need to sign a form. Otherwise, the teacher is violating this rule out of Tallahassee.
That's too much.
Again, a discussion in our newsroom this week about that very topic, and it was just heard on the local news prior to us going on the air. Another NPR station in Florida discussing that issue. And it's not just as simple as a Cal or calling Charles Chuck. It is their main concern on the state level is Chuck wanting to be called Charlene? Is that their preferred? Is that their preferred, and that's what they need for their mental health to go underneath what they feel they are, and everyone else should recognize it and help them get through this and understand this, and we don't have that. These kids, unless you watch a PBS special, a documentary on Black history, parents don't have the time, as you said, Al, to talk about this. They don't have time to talk about this, and my other concern is if you take them to a state-run museum, what if they start modifying their exhibits to fit better? We're already getting pushback from agencies that have state funding who don't want to talk about certain issues because they know that's what the governor did not want to talk about.
A friend of mine a few years ago, I think it was in Georgia, she said she went up to some monument, and I'm paraphrasing, and she was paraphrasing, but basically when it was talking about the slaves, she said it was like, oh, there were some people who worked hard all day to help build this land, and they went home and they rested, and then they came back to work the next day, and that was on the monument. And she was like, she said, as an adult, someone who went to college, she said she was confused. She said, were they talking about slavery and the black people? And that's what they were talking about, because these were just hard workers who just worked all day long and then went home. And we also, going back to teachers, I'm sorry to have to say this is why you had down south so many teachers. Remember last semester, all those teachers who quit, about 50 teachers in one district. We're going to see more teachers quit.
So I feel like the consensus of the panel is that we are currently living in the worst timeline, and there's another timeline out there that's better than this one, because I don't know. You can join the conversation at 549-2937. You can tweet us at FCC on air. You can also find us at First Coast Connect at WJCT.org, Facebook, YouTube, all the things. We are there. So, Angela, question for you. We got done talking about the appointments by the mayor. I'm curious if you know if any of those appointees were Cowboy fans.
You know, the hate is just real.
Why? I don't think they were. I think they. I don't think they were.
The mayor needs to answer.
We need to know.
We need to know.
Mayor Deegan, you're a Cowboys fan, right?
No, Mayor
she's a
Deegan.
Jaguars fan. No. I know that. I know.
We need to know these things, and so
Mayor Brown should have announced this before ever appointing you to the communications
exactly.
department. That's what I'm saying. Is that
there might have been issues. There might have been issues. So the Jaguars are kicking off their season, right?
Preseason.
This is the preseason. They're kicking off preseason,
which doesn't matter. Preseason doesn't matter.
Only a Cowboy fan would say that.
It doesn't matter.
You know, it doesn't matter to the Cowboys because
we're going to the playoffs, and this is going to be our year that we're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm just putting it out there.
It means something to the Jacksonville resident who cares about the Jaguars and has been thrilled by the past year where the team was really starting to show some real serious teeth, like a Jaguar should.
And that's thank you, sir.
And I'm not even a football fan, but I'm excited to see what they can do this year. And FYI, they've already removed the TIAA from parts of the stadium, so obviously it's well on its way to becoming Everbank Stadium, which is another major change. And then we eventually will, hopefully, with the Deegan administration, find out what happens with the Stadium of the Future, the $2 billion project that has to still get done right across the street from where we're sitting.
And we know last year the Jaguars we'll focus on the Jaguars now. We're going to get off the hate of the Cowboys. Cowboys will win, by
It's
the way.
not. It's
but
it's
anyway,
not hate. It's trying to help a friend. Friends don't let friends be Cowboy fans.
Anyway, the Jaguars last year, many would say, had a loser schedule, right? This year, have y'all seen that schedule? It's a
tough.
winner schedule. It's going to be tough for the Jaguars to see if they can still pull it out. You know, the Ravens, the Niners. I mean, they definitely have a tough schedule. You know, playing a Sunday night game, a Thursday night game. You know, they have a winner schedule.
Have you seen the quarterback's hair?
Yes, I have.
It's glorious. He'll win. That's what we're doing.
All
Like,
he has to do is just sit there and
Exactly.
push his head back and push his
On the
hair
national
back.
advertisements that he's doing
Yes.
already. So that to me is another barometer that the Jags mean something because he's showing up in major ads.
You know,
and the team snuck up on people last year. This year, do you think
people are going to be looking for him?
Yeah, do you think we're going to have that? The Jaguars will have that winning schedule, that winning team again?
Yeah, we'll have to see. How can we watch the game? When is the game? The preseason game?
The game that doesn't matter?
The game that matters in the development of the team.
It's tomorrow at 5 against the alleged Cowboys.
So it's against the Cowboys? Oh, wow.
You know, I have to tell you all that, you know, I'm a Cowboys fan. I've been a Cowboys fan all my life. I go back Danny White, Randy White, Tony Dorsett. I go back then, right?
I'm so
to way back when. And last year was the first time I'd ever seen last season was the first time I'd ever seen the Cowboys in person. They were here, Jaguar Stadium. You know, I talked a bunch of noise to everybody. Had my Cowboys gear on. Then we let them take us into overtime, and then we lost in overtime. I was just, we can't let that happen in preseason.
Cry me a river. I don't.
But you know what? But I think the Jaguars going back to they're going to have a good schedule. They have a tough schedule, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle it. So Al thinks the quarterback having the nice hair. As
a person who has beautiful hair, I can tell you it's an advantage. It's a plus. Dan, how are conversations going on about the stadium? Have they started in earnest yet?
Nothing has been. There's obviously been consultants appointed, but to my knowledge, there's been no sit-down discussions yet. It's got to start happening soon. We got to start getting some people saying we want this, and we don't want to pay this. All
right. And that leads us to my favorite part of the Friday discussion. It's the lightning round. Ooh, I love it when a plan comes together. We will start off with Andrew.
All right, so Jason Isbell concert this weekend that people should be paying attention to in St. Augustine if you don't want to go to a preseason game. Tomorrow night in St. Augustine, Jason Isbell with his new album.
I love Jason Isbell, but I am proudly going to the queer country thing here at WJCT. I love
Excellent.
Jason. I love Jason. Like, I mean, his album Reunions is one of my all-time favorites.
Chills.
Just it's a great album. But Queer as Folk is doing an event here tomorrow night. Doors open, I believe, at 6, and it's going to be amazing. And I'm going to have on Rhinestones. So you got to come.
Darn, I have to be here for that.
I want to see that.
I'm not actually going to have on Rhinestones. I just said that to make Stacey happy.
There's going to be so many people who come who are going to be upset.
And they will definitely be upset because I don't have them. Dan.
Tomorrow morning, 8 to 10 a.m. because of the heat, the big Caffeine and Octane cruise-in at the Avenues Mall, 1,000-plus cars of all kinds, and they're going to wrap it up early, apparently, because of the heat advisory, so you can get home and not sweat all over your shiny new hot rod.
Excellent.
Wealth Watchers Incorporated, a local local HUD certified nonprofit, is offering free assistance to those who are eligible for the USDA Discrimination Financial Assistance Program. Farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners can apply for the funding if they experience discrimination and it resulted in a loss of agricultural land, home, money, other economic loss. You can go to www.crop.org for more information. The deadline to apply is October 31st. Wealth Watchers is helping people for free to apply.
All right, and that's our panel. Thanks.
78th anniversary of the destruction of the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. On the next Fresh Air, we'll hear 3 interviews about the decision to use atomic weapons and what Americans were not told about their effects. Our guests are psychiatrist Robert J. Lifton and journalists Leslie Bloom and Evan Thomas. Join us
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
Well, have the latest on the deadly fires that have devastated large parts of Maui. Also,
I am so glad that the GOP's power grab was rejected in this state.
Ohio voters reject a measure that would have made it harder to change the state's constitution. LA City workers join others already on strike in California, and Americana loses an icon. More on the Roundup next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Ah, that is music to my ears. What? Star Trek. I am such a Trekkie. I've watched every Star Trek show that there is on Paramount Plus right now, and all the movies, all the things. I'm sorry, I'm a nerd. The Neutral Zone is a film studio based on Trek, the original series, and is across the Florida line in Kingsland, Georgia. We've beamed up Ray Tessie, owner and president of the Neutral Zone, for more. Ray, you there?
Yes, I am here. Thank you guys for having me.
Ray, like, you're my people. I didn't even know you were out there. What is this?
If I hear that one more time, I think I'm going to scream. But,
This is the purpose of the interview, is to let people know that you are on the other end of the communicator, that you're there with tricorder in hand. Like, you're there.
Yes,
So
absolutely. I am.
Tell us about what is the Neutral Zone?
So the Neutral Zone, and you said it best, the Neutral Zone is a live fan film studio. And for those people who don't know, fan films are Star Trek films, in this particular case, made by fans, no professionals. And it gives people a chance to come in and, tell their story and live their dream. And we try to offer that to everyone. And in addition to that, once a month, we do what we call Fan Appreciation Weekend. And that's that we open it up. We open up the studio to fans to come in, and we give them a walkthrough. And we talk about set construction, and we talk about old and new Star Trek, and we talk about filming. And it's really an interesting thing to see fans who are Star Trek fans to come in and react to what we have in place right now.
Wow. So you mean, like, I could come to the Neutral Zone and I could literally get on set and say, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a god. I could actually do that.
Well, I would be insulted if you didn't.
I have to come. I have to come. Like, so, and I just a little clarification. So you let people write scripts, they bring their friends, they dress up in Star Trek, and they're able to film a scene, a movie, a little short movie at your studio?
Yes. We've actually, the studio has released over 60 fan films.
Wow.
We have our own called Tales from the Neutral Zone. Star Trek Continues is probably the most well-known and professionally done. And there are guidelines that are presented by Paramount that you have to follow, and they're pretty easy to follow. 15-minute stories, or you can do two 15-minute stories. And, there's a couple of other bells and whistles you need to follow. But, yeah, you can come and you can play or you can film, whatever you want to do.
All right. We've got a caller on the line. Let's see what they have to say. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead. What's your question or comment?
I had a comment for Ray Tessie. I was curious, what would be the average overall production cost of a 25 to 30-minute fan film? Using the studio's rental, use of equipment, catering, all that stuff. I mean, what would be the overall cost?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just saying thank you to the caller. Go ahead, Ray.
Yes, absolutely. So we try to make it affordable as possible. So to rent the studio is $700 a day. And that is up to 8 hours of shoot time. If you go over, we're not going to we're not going to penalize you. Things happen. And it includes the lighting. The sets are, and just so everybody knows, the sets are really a recreation of the original series, and it was patterned based on the 1966 blueprints from Paramount and Desilu.
Wow.
So it's $700 a day. It includes all of the lighting. Beyond that, productions usually have their own expenses. If you bring your own camera, your own equipment, your own audio, then there's no extra charges. If you need us to provide that, there are and I really do mean minimal charges for that. Sometimes no charges at all. And we also assist. We have lots of volunteers in the area, and so they'll come and be extras for you. So it looks like you have a starship full of people or crew. Sometimes they bring their own crew themselves, director, producer, the director of photography. If you need that, we can supply that. But
Yeah, you got them
it's a little
covered.
bit of a la carte.
Yeah, you've got them covered. So what events do you have coming up?
So not at the studio, but representing the studio, we actually have UltraCon, which is coming up at the end of this month. We have Ancient City Con, which the UltraCon one is in West Palm Beach. Ancient City is in St. Augustine, and that is, I believe, September 15. And then we open up again for our Fan Appreciation Weekends on September 23rd and 24th.
All right.
And we'll be doing at least one fan weekend a month through May.
All right, that's Ray Tessie, owner and president of the Neutral Zone. You can check him out online if you have any more questions. Ray, thanks for coming in. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our show. Listen, before we go, one thing to talk about is Hawaii is facing a massive disaster right now. You can go to the Maui United Way, the Aloha United Way, the Maui Food Bank. The American Red Cross of Hawaii is also providing for the victims of this fire. It is massive, and anything you...
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
At ViStar Credit Union, we believe in helping members reach their financial goals and building stronger communities. It's why we offer our members better rates and give back to the places we call home. ViStar Credit Union. Visit vistarcu.org/join. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.